Well, thank you, Clarice. Well, this topic is very broad. We can approach it in different angles. Well,
Absolutely.
I would say that with regard to Africa, Africa is really living in a situation where it's what's happening in the continent is the consequences of so many events that are beyond African control that happen in Africa,
Mhm.
and that are plaguing that continent, until today. And so it's a situation that if we have to analyze it, we have to go far behind. In the post-colonial era, most likely, the slavery area, and then colonial area, and then a new colonization area. So it's very when we talk about war in Africa, especially view from our point of view, point of view of Pan-Africanists that we hear today. They are not just regional crises, right? So they are profound disruptions to the dreams of unity, of self-determination, and even dignity for African people. So the burden of conflict and all these disruptions is deeply intertwined with the continent's legacy of colonialism, slavery, and all that stuff. And also all these foreign interventions that we see all the time from various, superpowers and different powers around the world,
Mhm.
and also the ongoing project of nation building, that is often compromised by different divisions within our borders, and those are usually, influenced by external forces that also, have an impact, on these, on the local decisions that we're supposed to make independently. But most African borders, as we know, were drawn during colonial era, and so with little regard to ethnic or cultural or historical realities that we live in. So therefore, the groundwork for disputes, for conflicts, and different competing claims from different parties are fueled today by these decisions that were made, by external forces. So, it's fair to say that foreign interests, especially driven by, ambition, extractive ambition, power, control, and looking for resources, that they can use for the benefit of their lands, or the people in their lands. All these influences are turning local dispute into proxy wars that are, called, outright, that are also called outright interventions. So I would say in too many cases, Africa's war became, battlegrounds for global powers to deprive Africans of their resources, and then create a situation that they have total control to allow them to be able to use those resources indefinitely. But there's a new breed of Africans today, the Pan-Africanists, the people who are waking up and trying to fight back, and so for those people, the solution lies not in the external prescription, but in the solidarity, the self-determination, and also the political integration of African peoples
Mhm.
and different nations that constitute the continent. So Pan-Africanist or Pan-Africanism calls for, the economic, the cultural, and even political integration of the continent. Also for refusal, a refusal to allow divisions. Whether they're coming from historical, historical situations, historical, situation that we had no control of, or defined, today by the different interests of the world that we see today.
Okay.
So for Pan-Africanists, the solution that has to recognize that true progress comes from African-led consensus, regional cooperations, and the gradual realization of the African continent. Yes, thank you, Clarice. When it comes to wars, it's always perceived differently depending on what side you are on the war, right? So, wars. When it comes to wars, especially on the economic side of it, it's a big business, right? It's a big business. People go to war because they have different economic incentives. For example, resources. We mentioned resources, especially when it comes to Africa, who owns a great part of the world raw materials. Oil and energy is one of the things that have been attractive in Africa. So many wars have been fought in Africa because of that. Strategic minerals, we see that in Congo. For technology, IT, AI, artificial intelligence, rare earth, things like that. You got agricultural lands that in Africa provides, and there's so many companies are looking to use those lands, to their benefit. And so when it also comes to market access and trade rules, there is a vast array of opportunities that the African continent offers to different investors or different countries or different interest groups who might be interested in using them, in taking advantage of those opportunities. But in order for them to have access, they have to fund wars. We've talked about earlier about the U.S. and financing ISIS, to topple the government in Syria and other government. We talked about France, financing all these terrorist groups. It's why are they doing that? That's because France's economy is in shambles right now, and all the bad decisions they took with regard to the Ukraine war. As Christelle Nea mentioned earlier, they thought they would be able to cripple Russia's economy, by sanctioning Russia and then going to war economically with Russia. But it turns out Russia was prepared somehow, and they were able to navigate all these sanctions. How many? We talk about 10,000 sanctions that Russia is living with today, and so it's a way for those countries to be able to find ways to get out of their own difficult internal situations. For example, debt. In the case of Europeans, France, for example, they have so much debt, and so when it comes to resources like oil and gas, countries that like Germany, we don't understand exactly why they will accept a situation like that to be cut out of Russian oil, when they need that for the economy, for their industries, for the leadership in Europe in terms of economy. But coming back to Africa, I think African countries are beginning now to understand that, well, it's no more enough to be able to sell raw materials. We have to be able to, create our own industries. We have to be able to refine those products and sell the product, the finished product, so we can get more value. More added value on those resources, and you can see from different countries now, different areas. Many countries, especially organizations like African Bank, the African Bank that are strongly recommending that many African countries, instead of selling raw materials, they should be able to transform those raw materials in the continent, so they can provide more, or they can get more resources, so they can develop the continent. And so it's a movement that is happening all over the place in Africa now, that is hopeful for the youth, especially a continent that has over 40% of the population that is young. And those people, they're going to need resources, they're going to need energy, they're going to need industries to work. And so we have everything that we have on the continent that could satisfy those needs, but they are not well used, and there are so many influences that are, also impacting those decisions, and also the leadership that we currently have. They're not the right leaders that we need for the continent right now. So it's a lot of things that need to be, I mean, we have so many different issues that we need to solve, so we can come to a position where we can really harness the resources that we have, the power of our youth, and so that with the economic might that we you know, or the different strategies that we can put in place, so that we can maximize on all the resources to make Africa the place to be in the future. But it's going to take some time, and that process is ongoing, and we are very hopeful that you know, sooner or later we are going to get to that place. But so far, we see what's going on with Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso as a template of, you know, for us to be able to analyze and maybe expand on that in the whole continent, so that gives us more opportunities for other countries.
Absolutely, and of course, it